Astro Kids, and welcome back. So today I decided to go live instead of doing an upload. And this isn't going to be a long live. Today I would like to talk about a comment that was made on one of my posts. So I did put up a post asking if anyone had any topics that they wanted to talk about on Facebook. And that first question I had already answered, which was about why do I think Vedic astrology is more accurate. The second thing that came up was about the moon. And this was more of a suggestion than a question. This was about how important are the phases of the moon. And I think this is a very important thing to bring up. In Vedic astrology, we do talk about the moon a lot. There is a heavy importance on the moon because it is a highly important part of a individual's personality. The moon represents the mind in astrology. So the moon is dictating our thoughts, our feelings, and this is why we typically see people will act in strange ways at different phases of the moon. We will see this especially in hospitals or with pets, that there is different behavior depending on the different phases of the moon. But this also dictates the cycles and patterns of behavior within our own individual lives as well. And depending on what phase the moon was in when you were born, this is going to have a huge impact on how you function and behave within your own self. So that moon is highly important in astrology. It defines so much of who you are. Now, if you were born with the moon in a difficult condition. And so this goes just beyond the phases of the moon, where we're also looking at what are the conditions of your moon within your chart. And so if you were born with your moon as a ruler of a debilitated house, then this can give adverse effects. But especially we see this if the moon is being aspected by Saturn or Mars, that there can be somewhat of a difficult or challenging effect in a person's thought patterns or emotions. Also, if the moon is in contact with Rahu, especially, but also with K2, sometimes we can see some difficulties along with that as well. The moon is a very sensitive point in a person's chart. And so any sort of affliction to the moon can cause some difficulties in a person's life. And so, for example, if K2 were with the moon, an individual can go through a lot of emotional ups and downs in life. K2 is that shadow planet that actually rules Scorpio. So K2 is all about transformation, it's all about past lives, about mystical knowledge. And so there is a lot to K2 that is not of this world or not connected to this physical incarnation that we're in. Very mystical, very spiritual type of planet. And so when it comes into contact with the moon, we can sometimes see some mental challenges within the individual. And this can even extend to mental illnesses. And so, again, this all is going to depend on how the moon is placed and positioned in the chart. But another big factor is going to be those phases. And so, what phase of the moon were you born at? This is going to tell us how strong the effects of the moon is. If you were born in a waning moon, then the moon is not going to be as strong. It tends to be stronger when it is waxing or when it is full. There also tends to be a strong effect when there is an eclipse. And so, even if it is a new moon, if it's a solar eclipse, this can have a major impact on a person's personality. The moon plays a huge role in the way that we think and feel once again. So, for example, if an individual had a Cancer ascendant and they had their moon in Taurus in the 11th house, this would give very powerful effects, but especially if it were waxing. because the moon is ruler of Cancer and it is exalted in Taurus. And the moon also tends to function very well in the 11th house. The 11th house being the house of gains, of hopes, of wishes, dreams, your long term goals and achievements, of higher status, of your reputation in life. So that 11th house is where we gain a lot of fortune, a lot of status and achievement in life. This is a house that is also connected to your friendship, your friend circles, large groups of people. And so you can receive a lot of gifts, a lot of support through that 11th house. And especially with the moon there, which the moon also, along with representing the mind, is representing the mother. And so wherever the moon is, we do tend to get emotional fulfillment. We do tend to get nourishment from that position. And so with the moon in the 11th house, that can actually give a person a tremendous amount of gains in life. And I actually have this position myself in my Vedic chart. I have the moon in the 11th. So this is a common theme that I see for many people is that they tend to receive a lot of support, especially through elders or elder siblings. They will tend to receive a lot of support through those people, and especially in terms of the elders, through female elders. The moon is a feminine planet. And so this tends to bring a lot of good luck, but especially if the moon is full or if it is waxing or in an eclipse phase and it is exalted in Taurus, this gives tremendous effects. So the moon is always going to be very, very, very powerful. And not to be political, but this is a great example of Donald Trump's chart. He was born during a lunar eclipse. This is a very powerful position as the nodes are with the moon and the sun during a lunar eclipse. And once again, when the nodes come in contact with the moon, this can create very powerful effects, especially on the mind of an individual. So that can give very extreme, intense emotions or thoughts when we have the nodes come into contact. But especially during a full moon, that can really give some very beneficial effects in a person's life where they can achieve greatness, they can achieve benefits through that, where Rahu does tend to give us things. Rahu being the opposite of Ketu. It is that shadow planet that controls the sign of Aquarius, where it is a very revolutionary sign, very unconventional. It is also a spiritual type of sign, but it tends to lean more towards the material gains in life. There is an obsessive nature, a hunger to the planet of Rahu, where it wants more. And this all goes back to the story of Rahu and Ketu, which I won't get into in this video. But essentially, Rahu and Ketu were originally one whole being, and they were cut in two. And so Rahu is the head of the entity, and Ketu is the body. So Ketu has that fulfillment where it feels like it's good, it's full, and this is again being connected to the past life experiences, where Ketu is pulling in a lot of mystical knowledge, a lot of past life experiences that hold a lot of great wisdom, and a lot of this knowledge that comes in from previous life experiences or from what you already know really helps to transform us on a deeper spiritual level. Rahu, on the other hand, is the other end of that, where it is about achieving more, going after more. And so, again, if Rahu is with the moon or with the sun, tends to give very powerful effects, as these are our luminaries. So, this can give very powerful effects where an individual can go after the things that they want. They have this great passion, these strong emotional drives to go after what they want in life. And both of these entities, Rahu and Ketu, really help us spiritually grow and transform within our lives. Again, Rahu is taking us into that place of what we call the Maya or the illusion, the material world, where we have these obsessions, we have these needs, these hungers, and K2 being more of the mystical knowledge, taking us back into our previous incarnations. Both of these, using both of these energies together, really gives us that ability to transform our lives as a whole. And when the moon is there, this gives very powerful effects because now this becomes a part of your mental and emotional experience where a lot of very powerful events can be triggered. And this can even happen in your dasha periods, where if you are in a certain Madahasha of Rahu or Ketu, and it has something to do with your natal moon or one of the moons in one of your divisional charts, this can have a very strong effect on you in that particular period of your life. So once again, the moon is very, very strong indicator in the chart. And if you look at where the ascendant is in a chart and the moon is positioned in a negative house from the position of that ascendant, that can cause difficulties also. So, for example, if the moon were in the 12th house, this would make an individual incredibly psychic, incredibly sensitive. That 12th house being of the hidden realms, of being of secrets, isolation, hidden places, etc., the subconscious. And so when the moon comes into the 12th house, this really gives a person a very strong sensitivity and psychic ability. This also, though, can make them so sensitive that they can be easily hurt or they can experience lots of losses and difficulties through life. So you really want to pay attention to where the moon is in the chart. If an individual has a Cancer ascendant, then that moon is going to be very strong indicator in their chart as the moon is a ruler of Cancer. So that then will become their chart ruler. So I think that that question was a really great question. And depending on if your moon is in a really great position where it can give you gains, again, that 11th house is a great place for that. This could also be the moon in the 10th house that could bring in lots of gains. Any area of your chart where you can experience gains, wealth, support, benefits in life, and the moon is there, you can receive a lot of nurturing and a lot of support from others as the moon is always playing that motherly role. So when the moon is there and the moon is waxing once again, those are going to give strong results. And so I think that a lot of people are unaware of whether their moon was in a waxing or waning phase when they were born. And I think that it's actually a very important thing to understand in your chart because this is really going to give you a great understanding of how the moon is functioning in your chart. And there is a big distinction between the sun and moon. So there is a lot of conversation in tropical astrology where the sun is of great importance. When you go into Vedic astrology, you will see that the moon is really what holds the most importance. And the best way to think about it, which is something that I learned as I was getting into Vedic astrology, is what's called the Planetary Cabinet, where we give each of the planets a role. And so in the Planetary Cabinet, we see the sun as the king and the moon as the queen. And so this takes us back to a saying that has to do with how every great and powerful man has a woman by his side, guiding him, counseling him. So, what's really happening with the relationship between the sun and moon is yes, the sun is in charge. He's the one calling the shots. So, wherever in your chart the sun is, that is a dominant place. That is where your ambitions, your desires, that is really where you're trying to direct your focus or what you are trying to achieve in life. But the moon is really what's driving that, right? The moon is the thoughts, the feelings behind those actions. So there is a great relationship between the sun and the moon. And depending on how the sun and moon are positioned in your chart will also show you the relationship between them. And so, if there's a really great relationship between the sun and moon, this can give a really strong ambition, a strong desire to achieve greatness in life. So, again, similar to how if you were to put the moon with Rahu, when you put the moon with the sun, this tends to give great results. These two are the two luminaries or lights of the chart. And the moon is the one that is turning the gears from behind the scenes. The sun is the one that's directing the light out into a particular area of life. And so you can think of the sun as your outer personality and the moon as your inner personality. They are working together within a chart. There's also a great relationship between the moon and the ascendant. And so typically when we're looking at appearance or personality in terms of the way a person will appear or look when they are entering a room or when they're meeting someone or how they're interacting with their life in the world in general, we tend to look at the ascendant. And the moon also, though, can act as a secondary ascendant. So we actually do look at the D1 divisional chart, which is your natal chart, as an ascendant or a moon chart. So we can actually put the moon in the first house and look at where all the planets are positioned from the moon, which is very important when we are breaking down a natal chart. Because once again, the moon is representing the mind. So if we look at the D1 chart as an ascendant chart, this is really great because this gives us a general layout of your life, of all the physical aspects. But the moon is also going to show us how do you think and feel about those particular areas of life. Because, and this is one of the examples that I used in the last answer that I gave to one of your questions, was that if you have a lot of wealth, a lot of security, a lot of achievements in life, but your moon sign shows that you don't find joy or happiness in that, then that can actually be a negative. So even though this shows that a person could be very wealthy, very fulfilled in life, the moon can still negate that, where the person actually feels very empty. They can feel very lost, very disconnected, depending on how the moon is positioned in the chart. So just because you see a good or a positive position in your ascendant chart in one of your houses, the moon could be in a house as well, where this shows in your mind that you don't feel the same way about that. And so this is where if a person is successful in life and in their moon chart, it shows that they just want to feel nurtured or connected, that there can be a disconnect there where the person can go through a lot of suffering, a lot of difficulties. So the moon is highly important. This shows us our mood, our emotions, how we feel, how we think. All of this is dictating everything in our lives. And this is even happening at a subconscious level where if you feel a certain way about something, then you have patterns and cycles that are around that feeling. So, for example, if your moon shows that you really enjoy food, there could be a pattern around continuously eating the same foods, or there could be a pattern around overeating, undereating. There's different aspects that we can see from the moon. So, there's so much that we can gather just by looking at the moon sign and also looking at how it is affecting all of the divisional charts in a person's life, looking at any sort of yogis that it is making. So if you look at the yogas or if you are looking at Dasha periods, all of this has a huge effect on the moon sign. So again, the moon sign is really going to be who a person is. This is how you feel, how you think, how you operate. It's the deepest part of an individual. So the moon sign is very, very important to look at any person's chart overall. So I hope that answers your question. If there are any more questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like as well as a comment. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any new content. And once again, if you have anything to add on the significance of the moon and how the different cycles or phases or conditions can affect a person within their life or within the particular period of life that they are going through, feel free to leave all of that down below. Any questions along those lines, well, I will feel free to answer anything that you have along those lines. But the moon is a very, very important part of the chart. So I'm very grateful for the individual who asked this question. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.